I was walking along the muddy shores of the river Lynher. To my left, a mist rested over the quiet water, and to my right, a dense forest, which rustled in the light wind and rang with birdsong. It had been raining all night, and the sun was creeping over the hills and sparkling off the wet leaves. I had often walked when it was high tide amongst the trees, but never at low tide. I wasn't thinking of anything in particular when I saw what appeared to be a large branch sticking out of the mud. As I drew closer, I realised it must be part of something man-made. The wood, although black with mud and obviously deteriorated, had edges. It was the bow of a boat. The bottom was barely visible, apart from sections of the keelson which ran along the spine of the boat. Some planks remained fixed, and as I walked to the stern, I saw the rudder on its side buried in the mud a bit away from the wreck. It must have been about 50 foot long, and judging from where I was, I knew I had likely come across one of the famous Tamar sailing barges, which operated over 100 years ago on that very river, ferrying people and cargo up and down the waterways.
Was a beautifully atmospheric story. Enjoyed that.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers. Felt good. Only slightly fictional.
Fictional, but actually not too dissimilar to a true story. The discovery of Tamar Barge Lynher.
Yeah.
Today's featured ship is going to be the Lynher Barge. Very lucky to speak to a good friend of ours, Barbara Bridgman. Her and her husband Dominic have been custodians of this beautiful Tamar barge named Lynher, a boat that Hannah and I know very well.
Dom and Barbara have restored and rebuilt minimum 3 boats.
Yeah.
And when we're talking boats, we're talking big
ships. Yeah.
So, you know, she has some lovely, lovely experiences and stories and reasons of being in this industry and doing what she does. And it's a pleasure to talk to her.
It is. It was really nice to catch up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we should introduce ourselves for people who don't know.
Let's introduce ourselves. Yeah. I'm Hannah Herford and I'm the bosun.
And I'm Jess Clay and I am first mate on this bizarre vessel. Fictional. Fictional. And out of all of the fictional vessels we could have created for ourselves, we decided that this one was a thorough piece of shit. Falling apart, badly maintained, a drunk seasick skipper.
Yeah. But here we are. Yeah. Where are we now on this?
Yeah, well, after dropping Emily back in Malden, we got a call that we needed to be in Bristol in a few weeks' time. So we've decided to head, southwest. So we are somewhere approaching the Isle of Wight, I believe. Some
of my favourite sailing's been around this area. I will say that. That's true. I love sailing around Isle of Wight and all of the coast around there. It's gorgeous. Some interesting tide stuff.
Yeah, your great uncle's boat. I imagine you were around there, weren't you?
Yes. His boat's up in Gosport, which is just opposite Portsmouth.
Goss Vegas.
Yeah, Goss Vegas. So yeah, we used to do a lot around there, and we actually did the round the island race as well. We obviously go round the Isle of Wight, which was absolute mayhem, and I didn't particularly like it, but it was a good party afterwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know. And I've sailed the Solent on two beautiful pilot cutters. I've had the pleasure of being crew and first mate on Amelie Rose. And I've also spent a very fun few weeks on Jollie Brise.
Yes. Yeah, actually I went on Jollie Brise in the Solent as well. But you got some good... well, we're not here to talk about Jollie Brise. That's for another episode. But it's exciting anyway.
Yeah, anyway, we're making our way towards Bristol slowly. Yes. And who knows what kind of shenanigans we'll get up to along the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll find out all about that in episode 6 when we get there.
Yay.
But today's episode, like we said, is about the Lynher Barge. It's a boat that Hannah and I both know very well. As part of our traineeship, both spent some time on Lynher Barge. Like my group, we did a lot of small boat handling Is that what you did as well?
We did that, yeah. So Lynher, part of what they offer when you go sailing with them, they have a variety of different small boats. So they have rowing boats, they have a wayfarer.
Yeah. A diagonally planked Firefly, which is very nice. We did all sorts of stuff as well. Like, so we tried to do some dinghy sailing, but there was no wind. I learnt how to row and realised I was really bad at it.
Sure.
But we also learnt to do sculling, which is so much fun.
So much fun, and once you get into it, it's fairly easy to do, and all you need is one oar.
And some sort of bracket off the back.
Yeah. Yes, that would be... Otherwise you're kind of a Venetian gondola vibe, and that's different.
I guess, but then I'm sure they were saying, like, if you're stuck, like if you've lost an oar on any boat, but you've got a bit of rope, like if you can lash your oar over the back of your boat, you know, just to sort of hold it in place without it moving around too much, you could pretty much scull anything.
Yeah, great. I love that. Yeah. Like, if you come across as many different ways of doing something as possible, so you don't just have to row with 2 oars, but you can also get along just fine with 1.
Yeah.
But you do learn some really... Well, this is why Lynher did it for, you know, for us as trainees, because you do learn points of the wind and how to properly tack and how to safely jibe in a obviously in a smaller boat, but you can even like practice navigation and stuff with it.
Very much so. I had to continue my traineeship for an additional year, and part of my second year of the traineeship was visiting every different boat I could possibly find, including Jollie Brise, including Lynher Barge again. And part of my time with Lynher on the second year was to do some more small boat handling. So Dom took me out for 4 or 5 days, I think, in the Wayfarer to do, how to sail small boats, because I think what a lot of people don't realise, they see these, the lovely photos that we post as professional, traditional seafarers of these great big ships and their beautiful, massive amounts of canvas up in the air. You learn to be an incredible deckhand and you learn to be an incredible member of crew, but you don't necessarily learn to sail on these boats.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're so big and they take so long to react to conditions that it's not a good way to learn to sail. So if you can go back and do small boat sailing and learn the basics that way, like you become a better all-round sailor. So that was the point in us going back and doing it. And then, poor Dom having to take me out dinghy sailing again for this second year, which was... I just don't get it because I'm so used to these huge boats. So it's something I'm still trying to work on. But
Yeah.
Did you go sailing in Lynher on the first year? Yeah,
we did. We had a really nice sail. We went under the Tamar Bridge, which is always quite a lovely thing to do because it's such a beautiful, big old red sail going under a very, like a historic railway line. You know, it just works.
Yeah.
Visually.
It's so 1800s.
So 1800s. Yeah.
But it's lovely to think as well. I mean, I can't remember what year the Brunel Bridge was built. I think it's like maybe 1860, so I don't know, mid to late 1800s anyway. Yeah. So that would have been there when Lynher and the other Tamar barges were going up and down the river and the creeks. It's a real time capsule, I suppose, in a way, going under Brunel's Bridge on Lynher.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the attractive qualities about Lynher is that she can't go out of Plymouth. She can't go out of the river. As you'll hear from Barbara, bless it, it's not built for it. So it's not very low in the water, which means that if it was a heavy swell or, well, if anything happens, basically, you lose control in it.
Yeah.
But within that, it creates this beautiful image of, A, what it would have been like back in the day with Lynher going up and down the river. But B, people who live in that area, it becomes a part of the landscape. You know, you see Lynher and it's part of your heritage in that area and it's part of your community if you live there. And I think Lynher's unique in that way, really. I mean, I might be wrong and we probably get a load of comments about that, but I think she's very unique in that way.
Well, she is. I mean, in fact, we'll get into that now. Just a little brief history, really. She was built in 1896 by James Goss. One of many Tamar barges. They would have been, a very normal sight up and down the Tamar and the creeks and the small rivers that connect to it. tributaries. It's a good word.
Good word.
They generally were up to about 55 foot max, sort of between 40 to 55 foot, I suppose. And it wasn't uncommon that you had single and double-masted Tamar barges, so they weren't all exactly the same as Lynher. After the heydays of the railway, I mean, talking about Brunel and the railway, probably one of the things that was the beginning of the end. There would have been hundreds.
Yep.
And they would have brought farm produce from the farms and the small cottage industry producers that were all around the waterways of the Tamar. They'd have brought the produce and the producers down the river to Plymouth for market day. And then a lot of the time they'd also have taken manure from the horse and carts in Plymouth all the way back up to the farms to put on the soil up there. So a good mini circular economy.
Yeah, beautiful.
And yeah, there aren't many left at all now. So there's the Lynher barge, who I think is the only operational Tamar barge in the world. There's also Shamrock, who is based at Cotehele, which is a National Trust property. She's in constant refit, I suppose. I'm not really sure what the story is with Shamrock, but
it's a bit of a messy one, I think, really. When I was sailing on Lynher last year a couple of times, we went up and moored at Cotehele, so you're right next to Shamrock, which A is lovely because you've got the two Tamar barges
on their historic Tamar Barge quay there, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, perfect location for them. Shamrock was saved in a similar way to Lynher, I believe. She was hulked in that area, and people kind of decided to save her. There was a really good energy behind Shamrock getting refitted. I don't quite know what the situation was, whether she would have, been operational again. Regardless, she never went back into the water. She's still on the side, and materials have been bought. Everything's there, but just no work has really been done on her properly. And because she's out of the water, salt water is really good for wood. It preserves it. That's part of the argument of having boats actually operating and sailing. It's because you're looking after them in that way. Yeah. When they're out of the water and they get rained on, they degrade. They become rotten. And so I don't know when the last work was done on her. There certainly are huge planks of wood next to her ready to be put on for planking, but all of that has now been rained on and just sat outside for so long. Yeah. So it appears to be a lot of money has been put in, and unfortunately not much work has come out. Yeah.
That's a shame.
It's a real shame.
Yeah. Well, you never know what happens, but fingers crossed. So Tamar barges, obviously called Tamar barges because they were traditional boats on the Tamar. And they were special in a way because they are built with very flat bottoms. They're built to take a lot of cargo. They're built to sit on the mud. A lot of the Tamar River and its creeks are very muddy and very tidal. So when the tide goes out, they need to be able to sit. Their design, Hannah mentioned earlier that not a lot of Lynher is in the water, and that's obviously because she was designed to be fully laden, which obviously pushes her centre of gravity, centre of mass down into the water, makes her a lot more stable. These days she's, these days she's not sailing cargo around, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, that she's basically very empty inside. She's beautifully fitted out now.
Oh, stunning, yeah.
But she doesn't have a keel, essentially. She has a heavy keelson on the inside. She's unlike other barges in the sense she doesn't have any lee boards at all. There is nothing, essentially, in the water. She sits on top of it and skates about, which is so much fun. But
it is good fun.
But when you're sailing about in Plymouth Sound and there's obstacles like the breakwater, for example, Drake's Island,
or warships,
plenty of things to go hurtling towards.
Yes.
And not a lot of control, but she's fab. And actually, she had a diesel engine for as long as Dom and Barbara owned her, I believe. They've recently installed an electric engine.
Yay.
So she's now twin-engined, so they use the diesel only when necessary. They rely mostly on the electric. Very, very eco-friendly. She now has solar panels as well, which I think power most of the electrics on board and charge up the batteries for the electric motor. I think there's some regen there, but I'm speculating at that point. So Yeah, but she's very manoeuvrable under engine.
Yeah. And Dom really knows what he's doing with her, basically. I mean, he's just such a good skipper.
Yeah.
Absolute, all the faith in Dom and his knowledge for how to handle Lynher. And Barbara too. She's they really know it inside and out.
Yes. An incredibly simple rig. It's just a gaff main, staysail. I don't know if I've ever set a jib.
No.
On Lynher. It's usually just those two, I think.
Yeah.
And
Lovely.
It's literally easy enough for children to do.
Yeah.
And she's just a delight. She really, really is.
Yeah. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous boat.
And more recently, over the last couple of years, I suppose, we've both been involved in Lynher in various ways.
Yeah.
We did a lot of work on their website.
We did.
A winter or so ago. I'm involved with their latest project, which Barbara will tell us about, Sail Trade Southwest. Yeah. And you're a director, Hannah.
And I'm a director. Yeah, which was, lovely. I think it was actually you, Jess, that got me back in touch with them a couple of years ago because they were looking for crew for the odd day here or there.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
So I came down on my way back up from Cornwall somewhere.
Yeah.
Popped in and met them all again. And since then, just been, doing the odd thing here and there. And being a director is great fun. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who gets an opportunity. If you like the kind of strategy side of things and thinking about business. So, very interesting.
Yeah, good. They do all sorts of community work and all sorts of events and stuff like that.
My title is Director at Lynher River Barge CIC, which was founded in 2016 in order to save Lynher. It is a community interest company limited by guarantee so that we are able to trade, although we are not for profit. Therefore, any surplus that we generate, we reinvest in our goal, which is to educate communities of the Plymouth waterways through our maritime heritage, obviously. So you save Lynher for a reason, and that reason is that Lynher will help community understand the maritime heritage, the roots, where they come from, because Tamar Barges had connections all over the place in the southwest, but mainly on the River Tamar. Any single family whose roots are on the River Tamar would have a connection with Tamar Barges. There were Tamar Barges who would transport produce to London on a regular basis. We got all these records. They used to be called market boats because the early ones they didn't have deck and they were very, very easy to capsize. And they would bring the market people to the market, not just the produce. They would stash all the produce and then they would have just planks across for people to walk on or sit on. And then they would transport them to the markets. Not super ancient one, but say before the 17th century, they were very rough and rudimental. They were easy to capsize, and there's been, records of sad accidents happening with loss of lives.
You paint such a good picture, Barbara, when you describe that kind of world. And I think we've said before on the podcast that it just would have been a completely different landscape to what we understand now. You might get it slightly in a historic port when you go in and there's a couple of traditional vessels there with their masts and, people kind of coming on and off. But there's nothing like what you're describing, and it's like another world. When did you and Dom first see Lynher? Because I remember sailing past Cremyll one time and you were like, we used to live there. And there was a bit of a story there, wasn't there? You were living on a boatyard in a house.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's always been my dream to live in a boatyard. And when the charity, we worked for boat Mashfords, and we moved everything over there and started doing restoration work on Mashfords. The branch of the charity there was called Cremyll Sailing, and we used to operate Huff, Moosk, and then Tectona when she arrived, and do sail training for disadvantaged young people. Really, that was what we were doing, and it was a very intense, full-on period. We would be, working from April till November without any respite. was very intense, but very rewarding. We'll be doing different things. Moosk and Tectona were doing all the sail training. So they would be on tall ships and other sail training events and doing voyages for young people. So yeah, there's a lot of kids that came through those boats that are now grown up and still remember them. So it's nice to know that we've made an impact on those lives.
You've got a fantastic painting in the gym in Cremyll where you're based, and there's the boat that you were working on at the time, and next to that is Lynher. And Lynher was nothing to do with you guys at that point, was it?
No, it wasn't. It's that lovely painting. That was when I was expecting Leonardo. Dom was restoring Huff of Arklow. I was fundraising. And Lynher was owned by Wendy. And that was 2009. Wendy, she was unable to sort out the boat, which was full of rot, had lots of problems, and she'd run out of money because boatyard fees are very expensive. So she managed to restore a part of the boat, and then nothing was happening. So the boat was abandoned there. By that time, and I was applying, because we had success with the Heritage Lottery in some funding for Huff, and I thought perhaps we can try to help Wendy and apply to the lottery for Lynher. But I didn't know the charity we were working for was actually in trouble. So we were in a very, very difficult situation because the charity owned Marshforth and we were living in Cremyll House, which was part of our employment agreement. So by June 2017, we were evicted and the boatyard was in administration. But that period between September 2016 and June 2017, we had nothing to lose. Wendy, at the same time, didn't want the boat, so she begged us to have Lynher. So we took Lynher as an ongoing, issue for ourselves, thinking if we have nothing to lose, we might as well replank Lynher, make it watertight, and at least we'll have somewhere to live. And that's how it started for us to do Lynher in a bit of a hurry. But it went really well because there were so many people who wanted us to do Lynher anyway. So there's been a huge community response to our call for volunteers, and we'd have loads of people who helped, and we made the most amazing friendships and met the most incredible people, and they would come from all over the waterways. And I didn't realize actually how important Lynher was for all these people, and how this heritage above all of the Tamar River is actually very alive, and people get very upset when the heritage is not looked after, because it belongs to them, it's their heritage, and they will be the first one to come hands-on and help with any sort of task because they wanted to see that boat sailing again. And that really spurred us into set up the community interest company and make it into a not-for-profit organization, because Lynher doesn't belong to us. It belongs to all the community of the Plymouth waterways, and it should be there to serve them, provide education. And I think that's beautiful, because when we restore boats, we do it for ourselves, we do it for our own satisfaction, but we don't own them. They have their own heritage, and that's where they belong, and that's where they should be used. And Lynher is a representation of that.
Tell us the story about Charlie Force.
What happened with Charlie? It was the most incredible. So Lynher was hulked, abandoned next to the quarry quay at Poldrissic on the Trelugan Peninsula, because the quarry shut, was the end of life. She's been owned by the quarry in 64 shares divided between the two brothers of the quarry, the Steed brothers, and her long-lasting skipper, Sam Damont. Millon Castle, as a trading ketch, was hulked next to hers, and the two boats been there for 30-odd years until Charlie Force happens to be at the Tor Point Library and stumbles in this maritime archaeology book written by Martin Langley and Edwina Small, published in 1978, where they map all the hulks of the Southwest, all the nooks. It's a fantastic book if you find it, by the way, because every single nook and cranny of the Southwest is being explored by them. And another interesting connection, Marigold, the boat I came to work here from Italy, was hulked, and she was a hulk in the Lynher, on the river Lynher, not far from where Lynher was hulked. So Charlie read that the Lynher was hulked, but she was still in very good condition. However, when the Maritime Museum Greenwich and National Trust decided to resurrect the Tamar Barge in order to have like a living museum of a working boat of the British Isles, they looked at Lynher but decided to go for Shamrock because Shamrock had a more prestigious history of sailing along the coast and all the way up to Wales. So more offshore trading, with Lynher is only an onshore, is an inland barge and serves only the waterways. So for some reason, Charlie Force took umbrance on that. So right, if the Navy doesn't do it, I'll do it. So he found out who owned the land. He bought the boat off them for £1 and then went on digging all the mud out.
By himself? By hand?
No, he wasn't by himself. Lots of people participated. It was more than one, not just Charlie. There were a number of them doing it in between tides. And then eventually one day she just floated off of her own accord. And there's a wonderful image on our website in the boat history where you see the shape left in the mud by the hull being there for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then she was a bit like a zombie boat, she was just totally, being in the mud for so long. She was in a real state and brought up to Morwellham Quay, when at the time was owned by the Dartington Amenity Trust. So they were very kind. They were lovely, lovely people, and let Charlie rebuild Lynher there for free. And Charlie did the most wonderful. It was really ingenious and totally hardworking, but he was full of energy, resources, and just got it all done in the most kind of practical for him way. He wasn't a waster at all. He would reuse, recycle everything, and very clever. But again, he had the help of some wonderful people, including Ralph Mitchell, and it still took 10 years. Because the boat has to be taken apart, deconstructed whilst keeping the lines and then rebuilt all over again. And a massive job, he did a wonderful job. By the time he finished was 1999, nearly 2000. But he then realized his art was starting to fail, and the doctor told him to stay away from heavy duty work. So he sold the boat over to Wendy, who at the time was the secretary of the North Devon Barge Association. She was into barges, and her partner was, I think, a sailmaker or a rigger.
Right.
And they lived together on Lynher at Morwellham until 2004. She gave me her diary. She gave me all the paperwork. She didn't want to keep anything. And her diary, it is heartbreaking in that period of 2004 when she finds all this rot. And because the boat has been not sailed much at all, maybe once or twice a year, and they've been living aboard in fresh water, because Morwellham, honestly, there's no seawater getting there, extremely little, next to nothing. And fresh water, lack of ventilation, lack of great salt shelvings.
It's just a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. By the time she came down to Marshfield, finally, because we arrived in Marshfield in September 2004, and Lynher arrived in April 2004. You could see the extent of the rot. You could put a pencil through. It's huge. And it's double plank as well.
She's looking good now, though.
Yeah. Must say, Charlie passed away 6 months after selling the boat to Wendy. And he sailed twice. His family, his daughter, and told us, Catherine, they went to Foy and to Falmouth. So he managed to sail her, which is what he wanted. And I'm impressed that they went. I mean, if you go in nice weather, but I'm quite impressed because I wouldn't sail Lynher out the sound. But still, we've been out on the breakwater on a southerly swell. That boom starts going, and it's ever so heavy, and the whole boat starts to follow. And you cannot, it's not, there's only 4 foot in the water.
Yeah.
It's not enough to stop that rolling. Of course, if you go in on lovely calm weather days, and if the wind, if the sea is flat, it's no problem. But it's a Tamar Barge, which is 18-foot beam, 52 length, and 4 in the water.
Yeah, unladen.
Well, talking about seeing vessels kind of sailing and stuff, Ibis, new project, why not another one? Barbara, why don't you just explain what Ibis is, what state she's in currently, the fantastic job you guys have done so far, and what we can expect from her in the upcoming years.
Yes, I'll tell you all about it. Because the worst is done, really. Getting Ibis over to Plymouth was the most horrific part of the whole project. And we are very, very fortunate to have received some lottery funding to support Ibis restoration in order to create the sail trade southwest. The idea of Ibis is a port melon lugger built by Percy Mitchell of Mevagissey and Port Mellon in 1930 as the very first and biggest motor sailing fishing lugger. She had space for 2 engines. She was built already with a space for 2 engines. She's more, she's more kind of
agricultural.
Agri-fishing business. Yeah, she's got quite a flat transom, but she's so roomy. And again, if we want to carry produce under sail and people, to have a roomy, super sturdy, heavy weather sailing lugger, it's a nice thing that it's a nice thing to go for. Above all, if you're sailing the English Channel all the time, the sea can be quite difficult at times. And definitely Ibis has a record of having withstood any sort of weather and always come back to port with great catches of fish. So she is renowned for her sturdiness. And the idea is it's a wonderful heritage, that of the Cornish luggers all along the coastline. And for me, it's a fantastic new project because I've never sailed a lugger. So we got to rebuild Ibis in order to actually sail one and learn to sail one. Everyone tells me that, they are really easy to sail. But, until you haven't sailed one, you don't know. And every rig has its own ways of being and being moved. And you'll have to get to grips with it, which is super exciting, Anna, because, change is always good and new challenges and new way of learning. That's what I love about heritage boats above all, and about sailing. To be honest with you, any type of sailing, it's that you're never too old to learn. There's always so much to learn. So that's why it's exciting for Dom and I to have this project. But what is really important and learning from the previous experiences is about building the sustainability from the very beginning of the project and understand the challenges of the industry, because the problem of our industry is that it's so close-knit. Far too many, we're all far too, I'm Italian, but kind of, white and British. It's so important to have change, new blood, fresh ideas, mixing it all up like in a big cauldron to get a whole new system going, because the old system doesn't work, boats are dying. I'm often asked the question by others, because you got funding from the lottery, can you tell us how you did it? I can tell you how I do it. Of course, it's all about having new blood in the industry, engaging new people, but then you have to go and do it. And delivering the whole sustainability, it's not so much having some funding to do the project, which is great. And of course, we would never do it without that first kickstart. But how the real challenge is not delivering the project. The project will be delivered. It's the sustainability after the project.
Yeah.
So you have to have that in mind from the word go and build it in. However crazy the idea that people tells you, oh, this will never happen on a boat. Well, maybe it's about time it happens now.
Yeah.
If we want the boats to survive, if we want the whole of our industry to survive and actually pass on those skills, as well as the traditional sailing or building skills, but pass on the skills of how to make it sustainable to the new generations, because otherwise new generation won't have those boats there to learn from.
I completely agree. I think it's really important to see, and you do this so well, Barbara, you see every opportunity that vessels can provide. You know, it doesn't just have to be charter. It can be every corner of education, sail training, sail cargo, mental health, like helping refugees, produce, you know, it can be absolutely anything that you think of. You can bring that into developing a business plan for a historic vessel. And you've done that so well, Barbara. But like you say, it's delivering it then, and then making sure that the legacy stands for the future.
Yeah. It's always a challenge. You're always as good as your last project if it's been successful. And my biggest challenge is to actually make this into a business model for heritage boats that can be replicated all over the coastline, so that we're not saving one boat, we're saving a whole lot of them, because they all have a purpose to be. It's all about actually sharing your knowledge, but we also have to prove that it works, which is the biggest challenge, but it's the most exciting ones, because there is a big need for change and there is a big demand for change. And it's exciting. And it's exciting to think that a little seed like that, just having a little support from like the funders of the lottery, they plant the seed and we can make it grow and spread well beyond its remit in a way, because there is a need for change.
You did successfully receive lottery funding for Ibis.
We did.
Where are you at in rebuilding her? And tell us a little bit about Sail Trade Southwest.
So at the moment, we received funding in December. So up to December, we tried to stabilize the structure of the boat because she was falling apart, literally. And with the support of our wonderful boat builders, Chris, Graham and Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Wild Bill.
Hi, Wild Bill.
They are just super talented, experienced people who worked through any weather and saved the structure. Then luckily the funding came in. That means we were able to buy a shed for the boat. The work is carrying on with the reframing and the deck beams. I am dealing with a number of community participation, recruitment of young refugees and asylum seekers, because this project is for them to come and learn and volunteer, but also find a place to feel, fine and have respite. So we will be doing a lot of work with them on mainly on Lynher at our workshop at Cremyll. And when Ibis is at a stage where the reframing and the deck planking and the deck beams are done, then we can involve other volunteers, the volunteering in the restoration. The plan is to launch Ibis next spring 2024, so there's plenty of work to do. You can imagine she's totally gutted and empty because the boat was overloaded with rubbish, and the rubbish of all the previous decades down to the 1930 and the bits of fishing nets or corks and things from that era. So we can then detail the plan for what concern the different phases of restoration, from the structural stability to the designing of the interior. It's fantastic work. It's really a joy to do, and then involve all different types of community to do it with us. In the meantime, we are starting the Sail Trade Southwest, which is transport of fair trade produce under sail with Lynher in partnership with the New Dawn traders. So we'll be hosting events and having the Greyhound sailing in to deliver fair trade produce that Lynher can distribute on the waterways, and start promoting this new way of doing things like finding your food in a different way that does not produce carbon emissions and educating communities about it through Lynher's voyages, with the view that when Ibis is launched, there will be a route that she will follow between Penzance, Plymouth and Exeter, distributing fair trade produce delivered under sail to a number of outlets. So we need to start working now for the future of Ibis, so that when she's afloat and running and she's passed all the coding and stability that she needs to, she will be able to carry small amounts. It's not about the quantity, it's about the education that you promote by sailing in and out of these harbors day in, day out, to change people's attitude to things that they've been used for a long time, like just go to the shop, get whatever, never mind where it comes from. You need to be extremely repetitive and paint another picture in those minds. And for coastal communities, seeing a lovely lugger with red sails sailing into a harbour, or Lynher, it's quite impressive when she's sailing, going up the River Tamar or in the Sound or into the Barbican. When they start seeing that happening day in, day out, they will start thinking that's how they were doing it in the old days. That's how they were doing it when produce was transported from other parts of the world. Or maybe I can think of doing something different with the way I find my produce. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy it from us, although it would be fantastic, super high quality. But it's about putting that seed in people's minds, how to change, how can you contribute in your own small way. We didn't do it alone. I must mention some people, because you see again what a wonderful community there is in the southwest, and dotted with boat builders and sailors and people who care about these boats. I didn't know anything about Ibis. When I went to see Ibis for the first time, I knew we were going to do it. I just knew it. When I looked at the boat, I liked it so much, and there were a number of features, and never mind the structural problems, but there were a lot of good stuff in her as well that you think, yes, this boat deserves to be saved and it has to be done now. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know many people in Falmouth. The craning, the tides, all that stress, it was so complicated because it has to be done all to official levels. So it was a lot of expenditure. But also the mariners or yards I was approaching and said, no, we can't do it anyway because she's too deep, she's this and that and the other. So it was making it really difficult. So I must really thank, first of all, Dave Cockwell's, because Cockwell's got her out of the water. When I rang you, I said, Dave, nobody wants to do this, but don't worry, Babs, I'll do it for you. And it done in a minute, amazing. And then if it wasn't for David Cox, when the harbour master in Plymouth wouldn't let us tow Ibis from the yacht haven to Southdown because he wanted a watertight survey, and the boat kept on leaking like mad. It was impossible to give him a watertight survey. But David Cox came over from Falmouth, again, totally out of his own steam, because he worked together with Gary Mitchell, who's the youngest son of Percy Mitchell, who built Ibis. So that's it. He spent 2 or 3 days, gave us loads of advice, came back, was on board with 3 or 4, 5 pumps when we towed her across. If it wasn't for David, it wouldn't have happened.
Amazing. You and Dom have now restored and rebuilt historic vessels, but what's your driving force? What's your kind of passion with all of this? And I suppose, why do you think these traditional vessels are important to keep alive? Because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of energy.
Yeah, sometimes I ask myself that too, Hannah. The driving force is that we can we have a lot to learn from this heritage. All the different boats I've been sailing, and the more in the Med and in Italy, where I come from the Cantiere Navale dell'Argentario, I was always in awe of certain designs, certain lines, certain way of sailing. Some boats are built for some reasons or others. They all have a purpose. And I think by restoring them and give them another lease of life, look at the ones that are sailing that have been through our restoration process, but not just that, then the sailing operation. So I can mention the 522 square meters, there's Huff, there's Moosk, there's Tectona. They're all with other organizations or with other owners. They are enjoyed. There's a lot of people, above all Moosk with the Island Trust. It's still got exactly the same interior that Dom and I designed for her, because it's ideal for sail training. So all those kids that are going through Moosk, for instance, they would, have an experience that will make them grow, will build a character. They might even become professional skippers themselves. So it's a way of learning from some particular boats. Each boat teaches you something. Like the 22 square meter taught me to sail like I wasn't sailing before, because they talk to you, they're so sensitive, they're engineless. You have to be a much more rounded sailor to sail them, I don't know, in open waters like we were doing around the island race or going to Sweden. Racing is very exciting, getting out your aggressive spirit in a way and try to be one with the boat to be faster and sail well is something that for me is a great satisfaction. But also the history of a boat like Lynher, which is all about working boats. Tamar Barge is the opposite of a performance sailor. It's like sailing a 50-ton dinghy with a centerboard, sliding around all over the place in restricted waters, by the way. So mine, between the warships, the tugs, and all the little boats that, they want to come close by to see Lynher, they don't realize that we're quite uncontrollable at times. It's, it gives me a great satisfaction to bring the boats back to life.
Do you think that understanding of the fact that a historic vessel has its own history and you're almost like a caretaker, aren't you? You're just kind of preserving that heritage for generations to come. Do you think that's just an important belief to have when you're taking on a vessel like that?
For some boats it's more important than others. Like the fact that we're sailing Lynher without cargo at the moment, that it's wrong because the boat has no grip in the water. She was built to carry 10 tons or 20 tons. It would be nice to try to make it happen again. That's what we're working. That's our next project, really. Try to get Lynher a bit further lower down in the water. You wouldn't say Lynher out of the sound because her stability would be rubbish. So for some boats like those, it's much more important than others. Then you should ask yourself another question. What length would you go to save a boat and her heritage if that meant displacing her geographically to a different location? Mm-hmm. We have examples like the Trinity boats. I am sorry to see Provident and Lynher and Golden Vanity move away from the southwest, because when I came here over 20 years back, they were there. They were my friends. I love the boats, and I used to, be in Brixham all the time. Loads of good memories and fantastic friendships. But then you see Provident being taken over by Morag and her partner, and what a beautiful job they've done of that. Mm-hmm. And how fantastic, what new lease of life Provident has that actually didn't have in the last few years. So, she's in Scotland, but she's so well. I'm really happy for her, Yeah. And the same for Lynher, and Golden Vanity, and they can go other places because the structural configuration allow for that, no problem. So you see, well, as far as they're saved, and they mean something for someone and they have a purpose. As for, if the structural integrity is not compromised, then why not?
It was terribly sad seeing Provian Leader moored up down the Dart.
Wasn't it, Jess?
I'd sailed quite a lot down the Dart on Pilgrim last year and the year before, and just seeing them sat there, having known them when they're on the heritage pontoon in Brixham. It was such a sight to see. Mm-hmm. They were so loved and so used, and it was constantly bustling down there. And to see them sad, just tied up on the Dart, I'm so glad that they've actually got.
Do you know another thing I've learned, because you remind me of this, because Dominic was skipper of Golden Vanity for 5 years. And he told me at the time that we had to let go of Moosk because we had to sell Moosk to the Island Trust. And And I was very attached to Moosk. And he said, you have to learn to let go. Because that's one thing that when you love the boat so much, you cannot possibly figure your life without it. And it was so hard to let go of Moosk. It was a big lesson, because after that, I'm all right now. I actually understand that it's important to let go as well, because the boat needs a new lease of life. And if it stays in the same hand all the time, then your hands get tired or you get too repetitive. It's really important for everyone's sake, and even for your own mental health, to be able to let go.
And for the boat.
Yeah.
If it's being held on to by someone whose business plan is now failing or can't look after it. And I did my day skipper on Moosk. So thank you very much for looking after her so much that I got the opportunity to sail on her.
She's a lovely boat for young skippers. She's fantastic to learn. She taught me so much. And you're always safe. So my love for Moosk is all there. But I'm very happy that another good organization is looking after her.
Yeah.
And she's doing what she was rebuilt for. So it's the same. It's important to have sustainability in any project. And for what concerns us, operators, guardians, we are not wealthy. We just dedicate all our life and everything to the boat. If the boat doesn't have a business plan, we don't survive. The boat doesn't survive. So it's the same as being at sea and look after your ship, your boat really well, because she will look after you. So having a good business plan is paramount in being a guardian operator. Boats are really good at teaching to people, above all young people, but anyone, career changes, anyone, because you have to do it hands-on. But when you learn it hands-on, then it stays with you forever. So yeah, I suppose that's what boats are really, above all the heritage boats we work with, are really good at.
Yeah, there is definitely something about boats that they're just nice places to be, they're comfortable places to be, and they feel like a person in themselves, because they've got their own personalities and their own features.
When I arrived in this country in 2001, I was working on a gaff cutter called Marigold. And she was super traditional, because her skipper Jason was quite a purist, and Greg Paulson, who actually resurrected her from the mud and did most of the restoration, is a real purist, down to the varnish recipes and hemp on the ropes that kept on, breaking apart. But she was just an absolute joy, and I was living on Marigold on my own, doing maintenance and rigging work, and I never felt alone 1 second. It was a bit like being in heaven.
It's so good to hear about what's going on with Lynher and also their new project, Sail Trade Southwest. So yeah, really eager to stay tuned with that one.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep you up to date with all of that. Oh, Jess, is that the...
Yes, it is. I'll go and get the news.
Thanks. While Jess does that, we've got some really lovely news to share with you, and a huge thank you, because we have reached 500 downloads, and this is obviously the 4th episode, so those 500 are all of the downloads we've had for the first 3, which is just really humbling and very exciting that you're all still keen to hear about this weird little niche area of history and heritage and industry. And yeah, so thank you very much for that. We also have had some really nice positive messages on our social media and various comments, so I thought I'd just share a couple, because it's nice to read out what I'm going to call fan mail. So we had love the pod, shipmates. Great to hear some voices from the traditional sailing scene and the sail training world. It's made servicing blocks far more enjoyable. Look forward to seeing how this develops. Thank you, Ollie, on Facebook recommendations. Great show. Loved episode 1. Thanks for reminding us that the crew need their own space and downtime as well. Fair winds. Really enjoying these. Interesting, enjoyable, and fun to listen to. Cheers, Jess and Hannah. And we got a great one on our YouTube that said, "This is good." So I'm So pleased to hear from you all. If you want to leave comments, hopefully nice, leave ratings and reviews wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Recommend us on Facebook, leave your comments on Instagram, all of that stuff. We do read it. We do love it. So thank you.
You telling them about the downloads?
Yeah. Oh my God, Jess, it's so good.
It's so good. I was looking at our podcast stats. On Buzzsprout, they have a map about where your podcast has been listened to, and there's like a map of the world split into 6 areas, and we've got people listening to us in every single area in the world now.
My God, that's amazing. Hi, everyone.
If you're one of the 3 people who listen to us in Asia, hello.
Hi. That's great.
Or one of the 4 people in Africa or South America, then yeah, thanks so much.
Oh, amazing. Hi, guys. Thank you. And send us information about your local maritime heritage and history. We'd be really keen to hear about it.
Yeah.
Talking about the world, you've got some fab news.
That was someone on the radio letting me know that a great article has been published on Classic Sailing's website.
Hey!
Which is about the High Seas Treaty from the United Nations. I'm sure most of you know, people who are in the industry and people who are listening with no idea. Every country with a coastline has a responsibility and the use of the water X amount of miles out from their country. But there's huge areas of the sea that are completely unaccounted for. These areas are called the high seas.
It's not a joke. It's actually called
It's
the high
not a
seas.
joke, no. When you go sailing on the high seas, like that's a genuine thing.
Yeah.
But these areas are some of the richest areas in the world for plant life, animal life with fish and marine mammals and that kind of thing. But because it's so rich in resources, it's also very vulnerable for abuse and exploitation. So the High Seas Treaty has basically been signed by all of the UN member states to say we'll all take responsibility for it. And anything that's potentially destructive within the high seas, such as deep sea mining or overfishing and stuff like that, there's a lot of hoops that you're going to have to jump through to be able to do that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really good. It's so needed.
Yeah.
One of the key takeaways from that was the 30 by 30. So that's 30% of the high seas protected by 2030.
Wow.
Good news all round. It's not quite passed yet. The treaty's been signed, but it's not actually in effect just yet. There's a couple of other things that need to happen, but it's definitely one step towards protected ocean.
Yay. It's great news.
Yeah, really good news. Yeah. As seafarers and people who depend on these areas, you know, it's in our interest. And then it's in everyone's interest, really. Like, so much of the oxygen that we breathe is actually created in these areas. And, you know, it's such a huge carbon sink as well. So
yeah,
we need to look after it.
We do. So it's good news always here at the Off-Watch podcast.
We don't like bad news stories. There's enough of that around anyway. So you can always rely on Off-Watch podcast for your good news.
Yeah, exactly.
We must be getting close to the Needles off the Isle of Wight.
Yeah, let me go up and have a look, actually.
Did you know about the multicolour sand off the Needles?
Oh, yes, I do know about the multicolour sand. I collected some when I went on a school trip once to the Isle of Wight for my parents.
Shall we see if we can spot it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, thanks so much for listening on this episode of the Off-Watch podcast. You want to know what we're up to during the time where we're on watch, and remember that's most of the time. You can sign up to our newsletter. Visit our website, offwatchpodcast.co.uk. You can sign up to our newsletter there. You can follow us on our socials at offwatchpod. You can find us on YouTube. You can email us, hello@offwatchpodcast. We love hearing from you, and we always give a response. So if you want to say hello, we'll say hello back. And I'm going to go look at a lighthouse at some multicolour sand now. So from Hannah and I, fair winds.